Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Wade tonight. He has contacted me from the great state of Oregon. How's it going tonight, Wade?
It's going very well. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And so you reached out and you're saying how you would like to provide some information. Hopefully it would be able to help listeners about the time that you had lived. And is it okay if I say the area where you had lived in Oregon?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you had lived in Rainier, Oregon, and you had some really interesting interactions, it sounded like, with Sasquatch in that area. So I'm just going to let you go ahead and share what you had experienced.
Okay, that'd be great. Well, we came to Rainier, Oregon from Southern California as my dad was a pipe fitter. He was hired on to the Trojan nuclear plant as it was being built. And I'm one of many kids, and boys and girls, and I was the youngest. And Dad bought this land. And when we first got there, we moved into this just horrible single wide trailer until we can get a brand new one there. And right off the bat, some very odd things were occurring. We thought it was just the neighbors coming over, but it wasn't. To be blunt, these animals, or whatever they are, whatever you choose to call them, they're as real as the vehicles driving down the road. That being said, they had a nasty habit at first of just looking through our windows and scaring mostly all my sisters, all the girls, and my mother. And they would scream and run from the room, and Dad would always run out the door, and he would hardly ever see anything, but he would hear loud footsteps as if you were dragging a engine block through the woods, so to speak. We all started to get pretty good looks at him here and there, and in the daytime and the nighttime. And it was obvious as we cleaned the single wide up, the outside of it, that these animals were pounding on this trailer, and it was just pounded. And we slowly understood what was occurring. They didn't do anything aggressive at first. They were just curious of what was going on. It was obvious to a plowboy that nobody had lived in this trailer for quite some time, years possibly. So we knew that there was four. We knew that there was four because we all seen all four of them at the same time, many times, mostly in the daytime. There was obviously a large, and you'll excuse the cliche, there was a large male. And well, saying large is kind of a understatement. There was a smaller female. She was more boxy, chubby kind of shaped. And then two younger ones that were almost identical. One was a little brown, one was a little cinnamon red. And they were almost identical in height. So Um, the mom and dad had to rationalize this. They were lying to us children. They had to become professional liars to their children by saying, oh, these things are just like monkeys. They're monkeys, because we came from California and we'd often go to the San Diego Zoo, once a year kind of thing. And so, because they did not want their children frightened. So we thought, okay, they're monkeys, so we wouldn't be afraid. So in time, we had a new double wide put in above where we were at, and cleared off a bunch of land. And Dad had hired a company to come in and start cutting down trees that were enormous within themselves. They're, the kind of logs you'd only be able to put 2 or 3 on a logging truck. And that's when things changed quite a bit. They would just come out and stand there away from the tree line by a few feet. They were quite unafraid, all 4 of them. They would stand most of the time motionless. They had no fear of us whatsoever, at least to us, the family. Everybody was hassled. And when I say everybody, let me qualify that. The timber fallers that Dad hired, they were being hassled and they were being scared off by these things. The people that we bought the land from, a very elderly couple named Belle and Al, they still lived on the property in an old shack. They were being harassed. And so slowly over months and months, things would uptick. So what Dad thought he would do is let people at the time who was working around him, he would let the men live in the single wide that we did, stay in there for one reason. Dad said, I'm not going to charge you any money to stay there, because at the time it was super hard to find a place to live there. These things were on the property. You'd make a reasonable effort to air them out in any way that you see fit, and you're good. And so they did. I was always instructed to stay away from them. And it just got really bad, especially for the girls. For some reason, the male and female, they were just, they couldn't, it's like their curiosity got the best of them. And the girls, of course, would use high-pitched voices because we were young. And the girls were just frightened of absolutely everything. My older brother, he was the oldest, and I was the youngest. We were told things a little bit differently. Dad, of course, being this 5-foot-tall pipe fitter that resembled Yosemite Sam, also a Marine in the Korean War era, was no joke. You didn't mess with this guy, and you're not going to tell him what to do, but a very decent man. And he'd look at my brother and I and say, these things are a threat. I don't want you to grab a rifle and go after them, because that's what they probably want. And we never did. But the men in the trailer started to seek these things out to fulfill their obligation, so to speak. And it just got worse. I think that was kind of a mistake on Dad's part. So, this is a span over 4 years, at least it was for my brother, my dad, and myself. Now, after 2 years, all my sisters, including my mother, who was a heart patient and not to be startled, they had enough. They're always these were not the girls that we remember when we moved there. They could never get any sleep. They're always scared. They changed. And dad was of course concerned. More than concerned. He was, scared for all the girls. Every once in a while, one of the girls or both of the girls or all four of them, for that fact, would run in the house screaming, and and that's not good. And the nerves would be high for a couple of days, but then a few days later, something else would happen. The girls would get scared again. So, and this went on for a couple of years. And Dad finally sent the girls away to Kennewick, Washington. And the day after Dad had sent the girls away, he got the men from the trailer down there, and us two boys, and informed everybody, the girls are gone. I want these things aired out. All bets are off. So it's funny. People think, oh, just turn on all your lights and they'll go away. That's not exactly true. They don't care about the light. They don't care, because often you would see them in a light, like a old farm light in your driveway that you would have, and they'd be standing just a few feet away from it, either staring at the house most of the time or off at one of the other animals, creatures. So that's not, people think turn on the lights and they'll go. No, they're not going to go away. They're not afraid. So they tried a lot of different things to actually lure these animals in, and not a darn thing worked to lure them in. They tried to bait them or whatever. They just wanted to get a shot at them. And well, let me describe the animals. The large male, I remember this Boilermaker. He was a Boilermaker, and these are all savvy men. He had said the male was at least 10 feet tall and a little under 1,000 pounds. And he never qualified how he knew that, but you look at these group of men, they knew that. These were old school, very tough, all go, no stop, hunting almost year-round kind of men. And the female was probably about 8 feet tall and a little bit lighter, but just it's my opinion that when people go into shock, they think that, they could see when it's no big deal, but they're not ready to see how enormous these creatures, these animals actually are. And that's what stops people in their tracks. I think it's something inherent in all of us that when we either see something that large that's not supposed to exist, that it scares us into to act out or just to shut down and not move. But anyways, the two smaller ones, I believe it probably they're children. They were at least 8 feet tall at the very least. But they were very, very fast, and they would run. Every once in a while they would run, but they wouldn't. It's kind of hard to describe. They would lean forward a little bit, but their arms wouldn't pump back and forth like ours would. They're almost completely still, so it's a little off-putting. It almost looks a little cartoonish. Yeah, it's almost a little cartoonish. So about 2 months after Dad had sent the girls away to Washington State, the large male was standing directly underneath the light on a water well pump house. And we had just put that thing in and built it. And these animals had a nasty habit of not taking things, but they would pummel things. They would beat it up, whatever it was. They would just pummel it into the ground. It was, who could guess the behavior of such animals? But that's what they did. It just, it was really infuriating to all of us. It made no sense. Even a Tonka truck that I left out, it was just absolutely smashed. Like you literally ran it over with a car. And but there's no mistake, with the footprints around this talk on the ground. You can clearly see what had happened. So, but anyways, the large male, he never had a facial expression, never, not once. Everything on his face was it's like extravagated, like his eyes, his nose, his lips, like you could put both your fists in his mouth and still have room. He was kind of like, and with all due respect, he looked like he had Down syndrome verbatim. You'd look at this animal and just say, he has Down syndrome. And the reason why I can say that, because they would put their faces right up to the window. There's no mystery. Their eyes would move very quickly, and you would just see little shards of white on the sides of their eyes when they would move left and right or up or down. And the female looked like just like a huge mouthed person. All the same body parts, of course, but she was expressive. Her eyebrows would move up and down quite a lot. I was always surprised at how you could like see her pink nostrils. Really, it's just like the brightest pink within her nostrils that you could always see. And the two smaller ones that were almost identical, they were, they kind of look like bonobos. It's a certain type of monkey. So we try to keep an eye on these things, what time they would come and go, the noises we would hear, and how they behaved. And we knew always that they would leave in the wintertime. And they always would. When the snow hit, they were gone. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'd be guessing. But they would do things that were, now thinking about it now, is the most god awful, creepy things that, like between the new house and there was a very old barn there that we had, well over a century old, but very large. They would crawl clearly on their bellies. There's no other way, to describe it, between the barn and the house. And it was about 3 foot tall grass. And they'd leave a swath in this grass, easily 8, 9, 10 feet wide. And it would just be an arcing crawl. And I do remember distinctly standing there with Dad and my older brother, and my older brother exclaiming with his hands up in the air, going, "Dad, I don't know what to tell you. They're crawling." they're crawling, you know, through the grass, you know, and even though the grass wasn't very tall. And you would think, okay, how can such a large animal crawl only through 3 feet of grass and not be seen? And it's just absolutely creepy. They would sound completely different in 2 different ways. They would, if they were at like a distance, they would howl. Nothing else sounds like that. They would make very large, loud calls. But when they were close, it would be like if you recorded somebody mumbling but played it backwards. If that's when it's like they would mumble, for lack of finer words, to each other. So they let me get back to large male here. About a month and a half after the girls were sent to the Tri-Cities in Washington, the large male was standing in the light by the pump house, and his shoulders were well above the pump house roof, which was your standard 8 feet, roof. And Dad was so angered by the hubris of this creature that he went to the gun case yet again, and he pulled out his rifle. And this was, and I still got that rifle actually. It's a 30-06 Weatherby. And he was so irritated at the time, he didn't want to run all the way to the end of the trailer, excuse me, to open the door and shoot at this thing. He slid one of the 2 windows on this big window on the front and shoved the rifle through the screen and shot at this animal. Now, Dean and I were standing there in the middle part of the unopenable window, and you can see, what it's like when a bullet will hit an animal like that. You see lots of dust and fur, and the shock on the body as a bullet hits. Now, Dad hit it in the left shoulder, and I don't know where he was aiming, but I'm telling you, this animal, as big as it was turned around and got out of our view, which is maybe 30 feet to the tree line, and out of that light fast before the fur that came off the animal hit the ground. And it's hard to articulate how fast these animals are capable of moving. But they can if they're motivated. So not too far after that, their behavior changed a little bit. So what they would do is that they would step out of the tree line a little bit. They would make a left or a right in this big circle. I mean, we're talking maybe 4 acres cleared off in a trailer right in the center. And they would run along the tree line, like you see some people in the yard where that dog has been in that yard for years and it's got this, this trail just completely worn down. It had that look, but this was maybe 4 feet wide, and it was just dust. There was nothing growing on the circle. So that's kind of humorous, but it's not. It's a little unsettling. Everything about it is absolutely unsettling. So what I understand now is that they had a problem with a few things. They had a problem with the color black. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this. at the time, Mom had 2 cars. She had a big Ford van with lots of windows and bench seats for kids, and it was light green. But Dad also bought Mom a big, huge, it's like a 1970 something Lincoln Continental, and they would run into that thing from. It could be just a little after dusk, and they would literally run into it. It was odd. I can't explain why. I can't explain why. I don't know. But I went against my dad's wishes, and I wasn't messing with these animals, but I wanted to try something. And what I did is that, okay, the reason why I did it, they have a problem with splitting their attention, as if they can only pay attention to one thing at a time. And what I did is I hung a pop can from a fishing wire over a branch, just barely inside the wood line. And I fed the fishing line all the way back to the porch of the house. And it was up there for about 2 weeks until I finally had the nerve to jiggle the can when I would see one. This was the female, and I could see her, even though she was just a few feet in the tree line. She would sway just a little bit, I seen her, and she wasn't aggressive, but she seen me and she knew I could see her. And I walked over to the edge of the patio and I started jiggling that fish line. And as if you were teasing an animal, they became tormented or frustrated that she did not want to take her eyes off of me, especially after I jumped off the patio and started pulling the string again. But she could hear what was going on about 25, 30 feet away from her. And that's the only time I really seen her neck really move a little bit independently of her just this enormous blocky body. And she became frustrated and started like crying, like just this high pitched kind of frustrated cry. So I was just a knucklehead kid at the time. I knew nothing. I just do nothing. But I did this, and it lasted for about what seemed like an eternity, but it was only just a few minutes. And I didn't even have the guts to go retrieve the can after she turned and walked away. But we did see the male that Dad shot twice after that. And but this wasn't a terribly consistent thing with these 4. But it was just an instant, maybe once a month, sometimes twice a month, but it spread over almost 4 years until Trojan, the nuclear plant, actually opened. And we're talking the late 70s here. And but Dad had a very hard time with the people around him. The neighbors, there was 2 houses across the street from us. They never came out at nighttime. I knew that they were angry with Mom and Dad for cutting down the lumber for some reason. And I think that they already knew that these animals were around. And here comes my dad mucking everything up. You're stirring the pot and you're making trouble for all of us. There was people that would show up and give my dad a hard time. They, all the way from the Department of Interior, I think I'm trying to remember the logo on the side of that vehicle, but there was a man in a white shirt uh, with pins in his pocket and heavy black glasses and black slacks. And he was also with another man who was a very large man, very gruff, and very tall. And they were telling Dad what not to do. And I didn't hear them very well, but I definitely heard Dad. And he said, "You're not going to tell me what to do." Of course, Dad used a lot of colorful metaphors. And he goes, "I know what I'm shooting at. I've had it. If you don't like it, why don't you come up here and stay a couple of nights and see how you feel? You're not going to tell me what to do on my land. And if you don't like it, then tough, you know." The police and game wardens would be there at least once every 2 months. And that was a little bit more cordial, calm conversations. But everybody knew up on that land, and the land sat a couple miles up a road called Near City Road in Rainier, Oregon. And it was just past, about a quarter mile past a cemetery that is a private member only cemetery. I don't remember what the membership is on the right. And everybody knew without exception that these animals were up there, without exception. So I understand my dad's motivation that he wanted these animals gone. Dad bought the land to harvest the lumber, but these animals were making it hard on everybody up there, from just absolutely everybody. So it would be financially ruinous for us to leave, even though Dad was still working as a pipe fitter at Trojan. So, like I said, these are not mythical creatures. They're absolutely blood and bone. I think that they're a primate, but I think they're just more than just a primate. They're more, whatever that is. But whatever that is, I don't know. I think that you would be a foolhardy to jump in the woods, ignorant of a lot, to go look for these things if you think you know where they are. There's no part of that equation where that'll turn out a positive for you. And I want to qualify that. Everybody knows, even a plowboy would understand, if you don't want to be seen in the woods, all you have to do is stand still for the most part. But they have the ability to move so quickly that I'm telling you, because I hunt every once in a while, you're not going to be able to draw a bead on these animals. You're not going to be able to lead your shot if you get a clear shot. I think if they let you see them, they've either made a mistake, or they want you to see them, and you're in a face full of trouble. But for some reason, these animals, they were just absolutely fascinated with us kids. They weren't aggressive towards us. They would just observe us, for lack of finer words. But they were aggressive to everybody else without exception. Even the men coming up that drilled the new well up there, their equipment was thrown around. They seen him. They were frightened. Now, and I want to prove that even the men that he hired to drill the well were frightened on the second to the last day before they hit water. Dad and I were coming up the hill on a Saturday afternoon, in that deep forest green company truck he had, and they were coming down in their trucks, and they just said, "Hey, look, Dean, we've had enough. You gotta get rid of these things. We're done." And he, of course, they were exchanging some colorful metaphors. And he goes, "All right, I'll put the men right on the land while you're working as much as I can, and we'll make sure everything is okay." And they came back the next day, and they hit water, and then that was it. But they harassed everybody, especially the lumberjacks, the all the men that went up there to cut down all those trees, and not just a little bit of trees, but it took at least 3 years to cut down and process all these trees, which was good for us. That's why we bought the land. But they never harmed us kids. They never harmed us. They, like I said, their curiosity would just get the best of them. I didn't know a lot of the problems in my family. While there were so many problems with my siblings, regardless of their education, but they were still traumatized from when they were young, and until an older cousin convinced me and says, "Hey, you got to get this off your chest, and I also want you to understand why so many things happened the way they happened." I remembered a lot, but he helped me a lot to put it in a straight line to where I said, got it. I understand now. So now, to be sure, the property still exists. That old double wide is still there. The barn is gone, but there's 2 old bachelors that live in that place. And I have no doubt that they're having trouble. So I rode by there, I think about a year and a half ago now. And I go on motorcycle rides. And I couldn't help but stop in and see the place. And it brought back a lot of memories. And not a lot of them good. So if they don't want you to see them, you're not going to see them. If they want to take you, they're just going to take you, and there's no choice about it. They're too fast and they're too quiet. There wasn't any really odor to them. I heard somebody say once, I never smelled anything bad with these animals. I think there's a heck of a lot of them. There would have to be. Just like any breeding, animal, they'd have to be enough of them around. But if you hear somebody else talk about them, it's hard to know what to believe or not to believe. I would like to hope that they were just like a dog, a simple creature, some intuitive and some kind of smart. You can teach tricks, but they're not. They're more than just a primate, because they're emotional. They do emotional things. They act out. They throw fits. They're it's hard to describe, but they're thinking about it now. How they were acting sometimes, they're clearly they're emotional creatures, and that's scary within itself. If they were just a simple animal like a deer or an elk or a pig, but they're not. I think that they're considerably smarter than we give them credit for. So that's just about it.
Wade, can I ask you some questions?
Oh, please do.
Have you shared this with anyone else?
Yeah, I talked to one man who was a very decent man, and it kind of helped me a lot inside since then to it kind of made me angry because it affected my family severely. And only in the last several years that I realized that it really affected our family and what happened to us and how it shaped our lives. But I was so young at the time, I couldn't grasp it.
Right. So this is just a random individual that you had talked to try to work through some emotions you were having.
Well, no. This person was suggested to me and who's had similar experiences. I thought, well, I'll talk to him and try to, put it in a linear way that kind of makes sense. And it was, it made me happy, but it also made me angry for what these animals did. And they were just being themselves. They're doing what they're doing. I don't think they were evil, but they're just saying, hey, we're here too, and we're going to do what we're going to do.
Wow. So it wasn't a guy. Was it a guy with another podcast? Because if it was, I want to listen to that one too.
Yeah. It was, what was, a very decent man. I liked him. His name was, Wes Germer.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's
so
right.
Sasquatch Chronicles. Cool. I had a feeling.
That's right.
Wade, this is wild. Like this is a wild story. Did they ever try to get inside the houses or the trailers on the property?
No, they never did. But what they did when they would like act out, like negative behaviors, like you would get from a child, they would destroy things.
Right.
They at first, Dad put in a white picket fence. It was a joke. He always promised my mom he would put one in, and by God, he did. And it was a nice one. And they would stomp it, and not just knock it down. They would just stomp back and forth on this thing. After they knocked it down, they would try to tear the barn up, tear branches off. They would just like property damage, It was illogical. It just, my young mind at the time just couldn't process that.
Do you have anything from that time period that could be used as evidence of these creatures besides your memories?
Other than absolutely everybody else's memories and experiences? Well, I'll tell you what. There were so many people involved, and absolutely everybody knew. Every police officer, every game warden. There used to be a restaurant in downtown Rainier. It looks like a Thomas Kincaid painting, right, at the time, in the late 70s. There was a pizza parlor called Mr. Banjango's. And we would walk in there as a family. And I was standing by this little music box, and there was another family there. And there was a little girl in there she was pointing, of course, their children. She goes, "Look, Mama, it's the monkey family. It's the monkey family." And everybody in that town knew what was occurring. The two bachelors that still lived there as of like a year and a half ago, I think, as soon as I told them my name, my whole name, you could see a pall just rest on these people, like, oh, it's one of you. And they knew right away because there was so much history there in that town when all of that occurred. I think people kind of take these things for granted, that the fact that somebody would grab their rifle and go, when they bang on trees, that's right, bang on trees and try to call one of these things in, you're toast. You're not going to make it. So I haven't looked into tracking these things down too much, or what they really are too much. I'm still angry in my mind and in my heart of what our family had to live with over those 4 years.
And this is you're saying mid to late 70s?
Yeah. Trojan was finally done. And Dad just went to the next nuclear plant, which was in the Tri-Cities. It was not, I think the worst part about it is not just those animals. It wasn't just those animals. It was the social things after the fact, when my older cousin, who was the same age as my brother's the oldest, I'm the youngest, he looked at me, and he was the one that encouraged me to talk to Wes. He goes, ever wondered why you guys like Christmas so much? And I'm like, no, I really don't know, because, I really put on a dog, lots of decorations. And he goes, because those animals would always leave in the wintertime, and you guys could relax.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I'll be dipped in chocolate. And I had no idea. It didn't really dawn on me, I thought, well, okay, right. Okay, I get it. And when we finally got up to Richland, Washington, the Tri-Cities, those girls, they were nothing like I remembered. And they all went on to have fantastic educations, fantastic, for all intents and purposes, fantastic lives. But all their lives were just, well, they were kind of train wrecks, because they had such a hard time growing up in that place. At least they were there for 2.5 years. And my brother too. I mean, the very next day after he turned 18, he joined the Navy, and he was gone. He didn't want to have, and of course there's, me, Wade. Of course, nobody's going to stop and explain stuff to me, because I was just a, kid.
How old were you during that time?
10.
Wow, dude. Oh man.
10. I wasn't super young, but I was old enough. I understood a lot what was going on. There was a man that worked. He was a pipe fitter too, and I always wondered why Dad brought this one man with him wherever he went. And he was this large black man, but a sweetheart of a man, and his name was Sippy. I don't know if that's his real name or not, but that's what everybody called him. And Sippy did something that he said worked real good. The fact that one of these creatures even walked by him and hit the butt of his rifle, but it was so close with his leg, but he was so close to the house, and he was facing the house. Sippy was with his gun. He couldn't shoot. But what Sippy would do would get a bunch of trash bags, just old black trash bags, and tape them together, and he would hide under the trash bag just in the yard, waiting for one of these animals to show up so he could give him the business. Now, Dad wasn't a fool. Dad promised these men a pretty good cash incentive if they were able to get one on the ground. So this particular man named Sippy did his dead level best. until Dad died of cancer.
Sorry.
Well, he worked on all those nuclear plants. That's where it's from.
I totally get it. Yeah.
Wherever Dad went, like a month later, Sippy would show up. And Dad only worked for 3 different companies his whole life. And he brought Sippy with him wherever he went. So whatever Sippy did, as they would say in the vernacular, Sippy did Dad a solid somewhere that I'm unaware of. So I have no doubt that those animals of some type, I don't know how long they live, there's no reason for them to go anywhere. There's every possible resource an animal could want. I mean, you think, gee whiz, you got brown bears living in there. Well, sure, you could throw a big primate in there. So I have no doubt they're still there.
Wait, how far out in the woods were you guys living from the town of Rainier? Like, was it quite a drive out into the woods?
No, not at all.
Jeez.
We're talking up. You leave downtown Rainier proper, and you go through maybe a half a dozen blocks of the small town, very hilly roads. And there's a very large school at the bottom of the hill. I think it was some kind of academy, maybe. I'm not sure. And you take a sharp right around that, and that road is called Near City Road. And you're only going to go up that road maybe a mile and small change, if that. And it's a one long straight shot up this road, not a lot of curves. So it was close. It's not far away at all. To prove I'm not a complete idiot, a few months ago, I Google mapped it. I just looked on Google Maps. The cemetery is still there, and it's all just there. And even since the short time that I rode through there on a motorcycle, they built a couple of more houses here and there. But my suggestion is, if you desire to find one of these animals, it's real simple. You go up that hill, and between that old cemetery, it was some odd members only cemetery. I don't know which one it was. And there's a power line road there. You just hang out around there and they'll be right along because they liked the power line road for whatever reason why. You could, as sure as the sun comes up every morning, you could always go down there and find tracks on the power line road. Absolutely.
Goodness. I want to track down those bachelors so bad. They're being messed with probably to this day. There's no doubt in my mind.
Right. That's right. Now the barn is no longer there, but it doesn't look like it just fell down and there's a pile of old lumber. The barn is gone. They took all the lumber. But to the left where the barn was, there is a short little alleyway, cut through the woods, and there's a old cabin that's built. I'm telling you what, till this day I've never seen anything like it. The cabin is built out of like 16 by 16 logs that have been hewn off pretty good. It's just overbuilt like you wouldn't believe. And that old couple that Dad bought the land from, named Belle and Al, they look like they just stepped off a Norman Rockwell calendar. It's really something else. They lived in that cabin even the whole time that we lived there. So, but just a delightful old couple, And it kind of makes sense now why they would build a cabin like that. There's nothing that's going to stop these animals if they have it in mind to do it. You can run to your vehicle and close the door. That's laughable, let alone run into a double wide mobile home. You feel safe there. You can look from what I remember, there's no doubt you could go in a mid-sized car or your standard pickup, and there's no doubt in your mind that this animal, especially the male, can just shove it right over. That's not a problem. But to say that you would see one of these things from a distance and you'd just be justifiably so pretty freaked out because they're not supposed to exist or however. But they move in such an odd way. That's when it makes it creepy. They're so fast and fluid and muscled up. All four of these creatures were that. Like, how can something that large move like that? It's really something else. But I did find out a few things about them, like their attention can't be split. They get frustrated really easy with that. At least the large female did.
Do you have any relatives that are still alive? Can also.
Yeah. I talked to my oldest cousin about, or a cousin of mine, the man who encouraged me to contact somebody and try to work it out. I think that he would be, I would think he's a very reasonable man, that he'd be more than happy to talk to you or anybody that of interest. And he helped me put a lot of pieces together. Now, this is a very reasonable, well-adjusted man. He's not given to wild, unsupported statements.
Exactly. Yeah. So he would have been in the same time period with you.
Well, he was, because Dad hired him as an apprentice on the Trojan job site. So he had absolute firsthand knowledge of all this that occurred. But, he was 9 years older than I was.
Oh, so that's perfect. I mean, he's like right. 17, 18 years old, totally aware of what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'd love to talk to him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll try to get that together.
Anything you can try, but now sure. Yeah.
This same man lives, I think he's about 30 miles away from me now here in Oregon, and he's working the land, and this is a very decent, hardworking, mature man that his feet are on the ground. He doesn't, he's a pretty straightforward, old school dude. So we'll try to put that together. But I hear of all kinds of stories. It's kind of funny. The Pacific Northwest is full of all kinds of Bigfoot and Sasquatch stuff. And I even seen a Sasquatch motel one time going over the pass here. And you gotta just shake your head and you're like, oh, gee whiz. My wife grew up here in Oregon, and everybody has some kind of experience. We're more willing to talk about it here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's just kind of laughable. We even got a company here in Oregon that has Bigfoot beverage right on the side of their trucks, and they distribute. Yeah. And you're like, oh, gee whiz.
Do you mind if I ask you one more question? I'm trying to be respectful of your time.
You can ask me anything you want.
So logically, there was a time when you guys left the property, and it sounds like the Sasquatch did not leave the property. So did you guys leave because the Sasquatch, in a way, there was a situation where they won, in quotation marks, or was it you left because of a different reason?
No, it was an absolute. Well, there was a couple of reasons, but I would consider it a draw. Now, Trojan was completed. Okay. It was completed, and Dad brought us up to the Tri-Cities to work at Hanford. But also, a federal agency came in and bought the land from Dad. And these people were no joke. They would always show up in 2 and 3 deep. They were very cold and distant and aloof people, very analytical. They weren't warm and close. These were some serious hombres. And they he sold the land to the Fed Gov. And you just gotta wonder, you're like, wait a minute, why would the federal government want a bunch of land that's just been cleared of timber? And it's all residential up there. It's all residential. So hopefully in time, with the help of my cousin, we'll try to, nail that down. But he promised me he wouldn't bug me about this until he was going to give me some time to, think it through. And all it's really done was just make me angry because of what it had done to our family.
I can't imagine living through 4 years of that. That is absolutely incredible. And I'm thankful that you reached out to me out of nowhere. You came through a message on Facebook. I'm so glad you did. This is absolutely incredible. This story, right. But it must have been extremely hard to live through. So I'm thankful you can bring it up.
Well, you're very welcome. But it wasn't as hard for me because of my 10-year-old ignorance. But it helped having the dad that I had, because even if the situation was spooky or creepy or whatever, when Dad looked at you and said, "Don't worry, kid, everything's going to be okay. I got this," there was nothing else to talk about. Your dad was literally a superhero, And when he said something, you believed it. When he told you to do something, you did it. And it was literally that simple.
Did you ever talk to him later about it?
I did. And he would always start off with anger. He would use a lot of profanity.
Yeah.
And he said, those damn animals cost us more than I thought it was going to. And he said, we tried to kill every single mother loving one of them. And nobody could really get a shot on him except for him that one night in under the light in the driveway.
In the shoulder, right?
In the shoulder, that's right.
Wow.
And he was the only one that, gosh, I wish he would have, dropped it right then and there. But knowing what I know now about rifles, firearms, game, etc., that rifle wasn't big enough. I can assure you of that. It was not big enough. And there's a bolt action 30-06 Weatherby, right? You dropped elk with that thing. You're not gonna. It just wasn't big enough. It wasn't a big enough gun. It wasn't a big enough round to drop this animal. No way. I don't know what you're going to have, but it better be at least 50 cal.
I think if you guys had dropped one, that probably would have been the worst decision you ever would have made in your lives. I don't want to think about in situations like that, that you're going to have to deal with the other ones if you take one down.
Yes, that would make sense.
Yeah. That could have gotten real dicey really quick.
Well, my cousin had said something that was kind of odd. I didn't get it at first. He says, I think these things are vengeful. Wade, like big cats, he said. Big cats are vengeful creatures. And I didn't, I had no, I'm like, what? Whatever, dude, kind of in my mind. Because, I think these things, they got a mean streak in them. Like, you got me today, but you know what? I'm going to be back here in about 72 hours and you're toast.
Oh, yeah.
And I just said, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. Of course, that was in the initial conversation with him. So I'll contact him, and maybe we can get him to talk to you and get more clarity and more information.
Absolutely. If you could hold on for a few minutes off air, but Wade, thank you so much again for reaching out to me. This has been an awesome chat, and I think that there's going to be some interesting things that come out of this. But thank you so much for chatting tonight, Wade.
Well, I hope that you're welcome. I hope that I can help somebody out there that's maybe struggling with the same thing, and some useful information. Like, don't go running in the woods looking after these things.
Exactly. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. Shame on you.